Good morning, good morning, good morning. Happy Friday, everyone. Favorite day of the week because it's Masterclass Friday. For those of you who are new, my name is Terry White, photography evangelist here at Adobe. It's my pleasure to be streaming to you live once again. I see a bunch of people joining in both chats already. So Sheila Ferguson from YouTube. Great to see you here. And of course, all the people hanging out on Behance or Adobe Live over on Behance, b.net/Adobe Live, for those of you looking for that particular chat. And that is the main chat of the stream. So that's the one I pay attention to the most. But I will try and look at both windows as much as I can to make sure I don't miss anything. Today is kind of not a part 4 of last week, which was part 3 of Photoshop Crash Course, but it does tie in. It's not going to be just Photoshop. It's going to be some Lightroom as well, and it's really about making selections, various ways to make selections and masking, tips and tricks. And for those of you who are new to Photoshop, you'll gain from that because that's one of the key things to be successful in Photoshop is being able to make good selections. And of course, there are a variety of ways to do it in both Lightroom and Photoshop. So with that said, this is Masterclass Friday for those of you who are new. If you're watching the replay, thanks for watching the replay. We do these every Friday whenever we can, and it's all the evangelists talking about their various disciplines. So Photoshop, graphic design, photography, audio video, digital painting and drawing, and Adobe Express. So with that said, and without further ado, for my remaining 52 minutes, let's go ahead and dive right in because I got a lot to cover. So like I said, we're going to start off in Lightroom Classic. Everything I'm going to show you can be done in Lightroom as well, and even on mobile. Most of it can be done on mobile. I'll get into the things that can't be done on mobile as easily. But anyway, most of it can be done on mobile. All of it can be done on Lightroom Classic or Lightroom Desktop cloud version. And with that said, let's dive in. All right, there's my desktop. Let's get rid of the banner. And let's go ahead and start off with a little bit of Lightroom Classic and talking about masking. All right, so masking has gone through several, 3 major iterations and big refinements. So the first level of masking was literally, the adjustment brush, linear gradients, and radial gradients. That was pretty much all you could do. So for example, if I wanted to take a subject like this and I wanted to do something to his shirt back in the day with iteration number 1, it would be kind of painful because I'd have to go to, it wasn't a separate masking thing, but I'd have to go to the adjustment brush and I would have to start masking in his shirt. And of course it's if I overpaint or if I get some on his ear or get some on his neck, it's going to be affected. So I would have to zoom in and subtract and not get it on the areas I don't want it on. And there's an auto mask there to kind of help you go over, to have you not go over the edges. But for the most part, masking, I'm getting his hand in there. I'm doing this kind of sloppily on purpose. But for the most part, that was masking 1.0. That was kind of like you did your mask, and if you went too far, you held down the Option or Alt key and you kind of unmasked the areas, and it wasn't a fun experience, and it was certainly tedious and time consuming to get a good mask in Lightroom back in the day. Luckily, those days are long gone, and getting a good mask, God, this is horrible. Getting a good mask in Lightroom is a lot easier. I'm painfully doing this just to remind myself of how good it is now to not have to do this. All right, so anyway, let's say that was your mask and you want, by the way, I've switched my overlay color, which you can do. I switched mine to green. Normally it's red, so I'll put it back on what you see. So normally you would see that. And that lets you know what you've got selected and what's not selected and how bad or good your selection is. So then if I wanted to go in and change, the hue of his shirt or the exposure of his shirt, I could do those things once I got the mask done. But like I said, that was the pain of doing masking back in the day. And that was really, the brush was really the only way you could get in and mask specific areas, because the radial gradient and linear gradient were just circles and rectangles. So that wouldn't do anything for his shirt. It wouldn't do anything for him. It would just be kind of like if you wanted something specific like a person, you had to always brush it in. All right, so luckily, I'm going to hit reset, get rid of those masks. That's all gone. I'm going to get out of this image. We're going to kind of kick in and start from masking 2.0, then we'll get to And by the way, these aren't official terms. There's not really a masking 2.0 feature or a masking 3.0 feature. It's kind of what I call them. Masking 2.0 was the big AI introduction of selecting sky and subjects, and then masking 3.0 is a lot with people. So I'm just calling it those things. Anyway, glad you're a new age user. I bet you are, Maurice, because if you saw how painful that was, and I didn't zoom in and take my time, but I would have to zoom in and paint every little detail to get it just right and not overpaint onto the wall or overpaint onto a skin. So it would have taken some time to get that just right with a brush. All right, so anyway, let's go in. And let's say I just want to make an adjustment to the sky. Now, again, back in the day, I'm not going to do it, but I'd have to go in and brush all the sky in between the leaves, in between the tree branches. Good luck. Because you can see with the shallow depth of field, the tree branches and all that, it would be a mess to try and paint. Luckily, we don't have to do that anymore. So instead of me having to paint it, I'm going to go into the develop module once again, click mask, and I get some more. I get the new AI choices like select sky. So we introduced this 2 years ago. So now when I just select sky, it just does it. So for example, now if I were to go in and say, hey, I want to add a little dehaze to the sky, and I'm cranking it up just so you can see the difference. But my sky gets a little dehazy. And if I wanted to, dehazy, if that's a word, I'm going to change the temperature to make it bluer. I'm going to lower the exposure. I keep wanting to say opacity for exposure. And I can just dial that in and do a really good job with select sky. Now, perfect? No, most masks aren't perfect, but it will do a much better job than I would have had to do in a much faster time than I would have done by painting that in. Now, once you have a mask, you see that it defaults to calling that mask number 1. And of course, the next one I create would be mask number 2, and so forth and so on. And the minute you get past 2 or 3 masks, it's going to be hard to remember which one's which. So I'm going to double click on mask number 1 and just call it sky so that I know what that mask is for. So always name your mask, especially if you're going to have more than one, because it's going to the icons don't tell the story, so you're not going to really be able to tell by a little thumbnail what mask is what. So just, you can have more than one, name them, so it gets a lot easier. All right, so now let's go into this one. So let's say I want to select this person, and I wanted to just add a warm tone to the overall person shot. Their clothes, their skin, everything. So again, no more brushing. I would just simply go into masking, and I would choose select subject. And just like that, it selects the subject. Select subject is really, every update makes it even a little bit better. So again, I've got it, my overlay color is red, so it's showing the kind of a red overlay over the whole person. And now if I were to go in and adjust the temperature and make the temperature that's really warm, that's really cold, but just to show you what it's doing to the entire person. And again, just like that, I want to warm the subject up just a little bit without touching the background. Speaking of background, before, if you wanted to do the background, what you would do, this is between masking 2.0 and 3.0, what you would have done, this was actually back in 2.0, you would have selected the subject, because that was easier to select, and then you would choose invert to select the background. So if I say invert the mask, notice the warming happens on the background and not the subject. So now I've got the background selected and everything I'm doing is happening to the background and the subject's being left alone. So that was the way we used to do the background in the 2.0 days. It was just a two-step process. Select your subject or select whatever, invert the selection, and then you get the opposite of what's selected, which in this case would be the background. There's a better way. All right, let's go in and look at that better way right now. I've shown this image before. I've shown it for different masking techniques, but this one I'm going to use it to select background because this person walking through this outdoor market area, the market area behind him looks kind of hazy and could use a little dehaze and maybe a little lower exposure. But I don't want to touch him because he looks okay. He's properly exposed. So let's go ahead and go to develop. Once again, masking. And now this is 3.0, there is a mask select background. Just instead of 2 clicks, it's 1. Believe it or not, when this was introduced, there were some people actually complaining, saying, well, why would you make a background button? Because we can just select subject and invert. And whenever someone complains about a new feature and we didn't change the old way you do it, I always just remind them, you keep doing your 2 clicks. Nothing changed for you. If you want to keep doing it your old way, keep doing it your old way. I never understand the people that don't want progress. Anyway, especially when it doesn't affect you if you don't really want to do it the new way. So select background, boom, 1 click, it selects the background. Now, it did leave out this, it always leaves out this little piece in this hand, and I can click on that mask, and I can add to that background by using any of the other tools. So I could get in there with a brush. I'm going to make my brush much smaller, and I can get in there and paint. There we go. So I just got that little piece in his hand selected. Now the whole background selected, and then I can go in and do my dehaze. So let's dehaze that background. That's a lot. That's none. Ooh, that's actually kind of a cool effect as well. I kind of like that, but that's not what I was aiming for. Let's go ahead and just dehaze that background just a tad bit, and let's drop the exposure a tad bit more, and it just brings your subject to be more front and center. So yeah, people are basically, Tanya, yes, basically do you, boo. And of course, yeah, people are just, stuck in their ways, as someone just said, Anika just said. So if you're stuck in your ways, again, don't complain if your way didn't change. I can understand if your way changed, you might be upset because you have to learn a new way. But if a new thing is introduced and it didn't take away from the old thing, the old way you did it, don't complain. Just keep doing it your way. All right, next up. So that was the 2.0, basically the masking. Select sky, select subject, in addition to all the other ways we would mask. So same thing. Select sky and select subject. Didn't take away from brushing. You like brushing, keep brushing. Didn't take away from linear gradient, the elliptical, the color range, luminosity. It didn't take away any of those things. It just added those AI features. Okay, next up. Let's keep going, and let's talk about the next one, which is one of my favorites, and there was something about it I didn't know right off the bat. Actually, before we do that, let's get in. Okay, before we go to 3.0, let's go to one more 2.0 feature. I'm going to do, I think I'll do it on this one. I want to get his sweater, shirt, sweatshirt, whatever. I'm going to go in, masking. I was just thinking about how I was going to do it. Masking. And then I'm going to go in and choose. Now, like I said, didn't take away the linear gradient, radial gradient, but there's also this range pop-up. And this range pop-up gives you the 3 range ways of doing it. If you had a depth map, you can use depth range, but it's luminance or color range. So I'm going to click color range. Now that I got color range selected, I get this little eyedropper. So the eyedropper works in one of 2 ways. You can click it, click a color you want. You can drag it to make a area selection of the colors you want, because maybe the colors vary, which they do. You can also set up to 5 areas. So if it's like a lot of different colors throughout, you can set those 5 areas. So I'm just going to drag a little rectangle right here, and it will select that. Now notice it also selecting like a little of his face, a little of his head. I'm not sure why, because his hair doesn't look blue, but I can keep clicking and try and deselect that, but it's really not doing a good job. So although it did select it, I could bring down, let's reset automatic amount. Oh, that's the amount slider, sorry. I can refine the selection and try and bring it down a bit so that it's not selecting that. And let's see what that gives me. And then if I want to change the color of a sweater, there we go, I can. So I can make a sweater green now, or purple, or maroon, or whatever color I want. And that will let me select based on color range. So all of those selection methods, way easier than brushing. And if you need to brush, you can add or subtract from a mask using a brush just to do the little piece you need, as opposed to having to brush the whole thing from scratch. All right, I'm going to reset this one because I'm going to come back to this one in a minute. Okay. Next up is one of my favorites, which is selecting objects. So let's go back to the girl throwing a frisbee here. And she's got a nice orange frisbee, and she whispered in my ear and said, I really wish that frisbee was red. I've said that joke before. And before, again, you'd have to brush the frisbee and then change the color. Now we don't have to do that because we have object selections, and this is part of 3.0. So if I go to my develop menu, or develop module, and I click on mask, there's the sky that was still there, create a new mask, and then it asks me, well, how do you want to create it? Now, we already learned about color range, but the problem is, if I were to try and just pick the orange in the frisbee, that kid in the back directly behind the frisbee looks like he's wearing some orange tone pants. So it would select his pants too. I don't want to do that. I could brush it in. Definitely don't want to do that. And then there's a new objects choice. And this defaulted to a brush when it first came out, and I never noticed that there was another option. So I was using this the wrong way, or not the wrong way, but not the best way when it first came out. I was using the brush, and it doesn't really, you don't have to be as careful. So let's say that I just want to, I'm going to really not be careful and do that. Okay, I don't even have to fill the whole thing in. And then boom, it guesses what you're trying to do. Very similar to the object selection tool in Photoshop. So I didn't, even though I was way outside the lines, wasn't careful at all, it guessed I wanted the frisbee. And now I can go in and do the same kind of thing. What did I say? She wanted a red one? Where red is. That's more red there, right there. And then we might drop the exposure to make it more red. And there we go. So now we got our kind of almost red pinkish frisbee. Okay, so object selection with a brush for the object selection tool works great. And it does auto select. Even if you overbrush, you don't have to be very careful with the brushing. But let me undo that. Undo, undo, undo. Let me undo that mask to show you the better way to do this. When I discovered this, I think I discovered it in one of the master classes. I just looked over and saw the option. I was like, no, don't tell me I was doing it the hard way all this time. Yep, so let's go ahead and click Create New Mask, Objects again. And what I happen to glance over and see is next to the brush, there's this. It's a little rectangle, square. So this is okay. It works. Nothing wrong with it. This is way faster. So let's click the rectangle, because this, again, works more like it does in Photoshop. So if I were to just grab the rectangle and drag around the frisbee and let go, boom, done. Don't have to think about it. So brushing in, especially on a big object, can take a minute. Dragging a rectangle, much faster and easier because it's using AI to figure out, oh, he probably wants the Frisbee since he drug around that object, because it's the object selection tool. All right, so now, again, once I go in and make changes, I can change it all the way and change it to blue or purple or whatever color I want, maybe match the pants. There you go, and it does a really good job. Now, keep in mind, when I was teaching the first 1 and 2 classes of the Photoshop crash course, I said, if you're going to do this kind of stuff, you got to make it look real. So here's the problem with this. This worked great on the Frisbee, but look at her sleeve. Her sleeve, if I were to grab my zoom key there, her sleeve is still reflecting the orange from the original Frisbee. So if you wanted to really make that look realistic, you'd have to go into Photoshop really and do this properly. Well, I mean, you could brush it in, I guess. You could brush that little piece in and change that color too. So just keep in mind that when you're doing things like this, changing colors, make sure you do a good job. And there's a little halo there, so I might want to go and subtract that little halo around it. But anyway, just keep that in mind, that that reflection on her, or that sun shining through the orange Frisbee onto her sleeve, is orange. That would also need to change to blue. Okay, that's one case of the object selection tool. Let's get out of this and let's go to this one. Same thing here. These two guys are wearing hats. This guy isn't. If I wanted to change this one hat to a different color or different shade or anything about it, I could go into the object selection tool, masking objects, and I could brush it, but much easier to just do this. And even if I don't get it all, it kind of figures out, oh, you must want the hat. So it got the hat. It didn't get the, yeah, I said that. It didn't get the fine edges, and I said you would go in and just kind of brush that out. All right, so let's go in and there we go. So now I'm changing the hat to maybe a different color. I like the original color best for the hat, but yeah, none of these colors kind of suit him, and especially with what he's wearing. But anyway, you can go ahead and change the hat. So let's go in, and that's the object selection tool. And see how it even worked around his fingers? Hold on. There we go. Worked around his finger. Look how good of a job it did around his fingers, and got in there and did just amazing. So no mask is perfect. You might need to go in and when in doubt, go purple. That's right. You might want to go in and just check it and refine it if you want to, with a little bit of brushing on the edges, but that's, you know, this one came out much better. Okay. What about more stark or colder pictures? What about them? I don't know what you mean. Like, I get what stark and colder pictures are, but what about them? Okay, and keep in mind that I'm using hue to make the changes. You also have color to go in and make changes as well. So if you're trying to, if the color if you're not getting the exact color you want with hue, you can also bring up color to do it. Okay, let's jump out of that one. And now let's get into the big new thing with selecting masking 3.0, which is selecting people. Is that Jarvison? I love your training videos. I cannot tell you how much they have helped my studio work. I'm glad I could help you. Hopefully I pronounced your name right, or your studio name right. Good afternoon from Denmark. Hello, Hassan and JP. Great. Okay, moving on. What was I going to say? People. So I skipped over this one. I skipped over these two for a reason. I'm going to come back to these now. When you wanted to change aspects of a person, their skin, their eyes, their lips, their face skin versus body skin, their hair, their eyebrows. All of those things used to be manual painting. So if you, I gotta really fix the color you guys are seeing on your screen. I'm just glancing at the replay or the live stream now. You guys are getting way more saturated colors than what I'm seeing on my screen. So I gotta tweak the capture card for this thing. Anyway, just note your colors are way more saturated than what I'm looking at. All right, so next up. So let's say that I wanted to change just, for example, just her lipstick color. Something simple. Before, that would mean brushing her lip. And isolating and masking feels a bit more difficult. I guess you mean on more stark or colder pictures, or I'm doing it wrong. Well, again, the AI stuff shouldn't matter the tone. It should still select subjects and skies, and in this case, people, even on colder images. So let me know if that's not the case. All right. All right, so again, where was I? I was headed to people. Let's go to develop. Now, when you click masking and there's a person or multiple people, it will automatically detect people. It doesn't know their names, so it calls person 1, person 2, person 3. How many ever people you have in there, it'll try and identify them all. So there's only one person in the shot, so it called her person 1. And if I click on that, and I say entire person, that's really, in this case, would give me the same result as select subject. But notice I have all these options now. Face skin, body skin, eyebrows, eye sclera, which is the, I didn't know what that term meant. It's the whites of the eyes. Iris and pupil, of course, is the pupil itself. Lips, teeth, and if something is grayed out, by the way, that usually means because it's there, like her teeth are showing. But I've seen like teeth be grayed out if the mouth is completely closed because there's no teeth to select. All right, so let's say I do lips. And you can check off more than one thing. So if I wanted to change the lips and her iris and pupil at the same time, I could do them both, or I can create separate masks for each one. Either way. So if I uncheck this box that says create 2 separate masks, then it will make one combined mask of the lips and eyes, and whatever I do will change the lips and eyes. Or I'm saying, hey, while I'm at it, I know I want these separate things, so go ahead and give me iris and pupil, lips, teeth, and hair. Give me all of those as create 4 separate masks. That way I don't have to keep coming back to this, doing them one at a time. Okay, so let's go ahead and click create. And there it is. It gave me my 4 separate masks. So I know this one is hair. I can tell by the icon. I don't know what this one is. This one looks like might be teeth. And this one looks like lips. That's the pupils. Okay. I'll just say eyes. All right, and this one is lips. Okay, so now that I got them all separated out and I know which one's which, I can click on lips, for example. And now that I got lips selected, I can go ahead and go to town on changing the color just that easily. So, yeah, it's this is game changing. I remember when I first saw 2.0 and I thought that was game changing. This couldn't be more game changing for not having to do all that work manually. So whatever it is you need to select, you've got a way to do it. You want to brighten someone's teeth, you've got a teeth selector. You can either bump up the exposure, don't go too far. You can reduce the yellowing, you can do whatever you need to do. Her teeth look great, so I don't really need to do this, but just letting you know that, again, it selected the teeth. If I were to go into the to her eye, which is her pupils, and we were to zoom in on that, and I were to just play with the colors, I get the pupil color changing very nicely. So the masking that's automatic is saving people, photographers, people that use Lightroom, hours and hours and hours of manually painting or manually trying to go to do something, or just saying, screw it, I'll just go to Photoshop and do it where I can. So much easier to do this stuff today than it ever was before. And to get unrealistic colors of eyes. Okay, let's jump out of this. There we go. And again, if you don't like something, you can just turn that mask off. You can delete the mask. You can turn the mask back on. You can add to the mask, subtract from the mask, so forth and so on. Okay. And I didn't show hair, but there's her hair. There's not much I can do with it because it is what it is. But yes, the hair mask is not awesome, but it did select the hair. So if I were just maybe just darkening the hair a little bit, there you go. Kind of make it look a little more, fill in the shadows just a little bit more of the hair. I could. Separate mask, word title, lips, teeth. Yeah, it would be nice. Lewis, you're right. If you selected hair, it should title the mask hair. I agree. I will give that to the team to hopefully implement. Because yeah, there's no reason for it not to. If you selected hair, it maybe call it hair person 1, whatever. But it should name the mask what you selected. I totally agree with that. All right, next up. Okay, so combining masks, using 2 or 3 masks together to achieve an effect or result. So for example, I've got this situation here where the bride, I'm assuming she's a bride carrying a bouquet with looks like a wedding dress on, but we'll call her the bride, is facing away from the camera, which is fine. But what's distracting in this photo is the wall has the same amount of light as she does. So typically you would want your subject to stand out when you're lighting, and this is just spillovers. Whoever shot this, the light spilled over onto the wall. So I would want to darken the wall without necessarily darkening her because she's properly exposed. I just don't want the wall as bright as it is. Now again, I don't want to have to paint the wall, lower the exposure of the wall. That's too much work. So I'm going to do the next best thing. I'm going to go to develop, mask, and this time, so this isn't an AI thing. This isn't a select subject because she's the subject. This isn't a select background because the whole wall's the background. This is just kind of, I want to select a certain part of the image. So, and I want to do it gradually. So that's what the linear gradient would be great for in this case. So I'm going to go ahead and just click and drag from the left to the right. I'm sorry, from the right to the left. And that's kind of the area I want to cover. Now, the problem is when I drop the exposure, it'll be the heaviest on the right going to the left. When I drop the exposure, look at what happens to her right side as well. Her right side gets that same treatment. That's what I didn't want to happen. So keep in mind, you've got a mask called wall. And we now want, you know what? Hey, I'm going to take your suggestion even further. It's AI, so it should know that I painted on a wall. So maybe propose that name as the mask. I don't know. Anyway. All right. So anyway, we got the wall selected, and it's doing a great job darkening the wall, but it's also affecting her. So what I'm going to do with that wall mask is subtract from it. So when you click on a mask, it's either on or off. When I click on it, I get an add and subtract button down below. That add and subtract button, ooh, I didn't know that gave me intersect, great. That add and subtract button is just as the name implies. It lets you add or subtract from the mask you have. So I'm going to hit subtract because I want to subtract her from this mask. Don't affect her by this. Subtract, and then it says subtract using what method? You want to brush her out? No. You want to select the sky? No, because there's no sky. Select subject. Yeah, that would probably be the best one. Select subject. And that will select her and automatically exclude her from the mask because you did subtract. So it just selected her as a subject, automatically excluded from the mask. Lighting of her doesn't change. Now you're only affecting the wall with what you do to exposure. So whatever you do to the exposure, nothing's happening to her. So that way I can just dial it down to where I need it to be, to where you can still kind of see that it's a wall there, but your eye immediately goes back to her because don't worry, we're coming to intersect. I showed intersect. I showed that I didn't realize that when you add and subtract, you have an if you hold down your Option or Alt key, it shows the intersect button. We're going to get to that in a minute. Anyway, it will do what I said. It will basically subtract her from the mask. She's not being affected. Now it's just the wall. Great. All right, let's, that's where we're going next, is actually intersect. So I have a couple of these I want to do intersect on, because intersect's one of those concepts that might take 2 or 3 examples for you to get your head around it. What is intersect? What is intersect? Oh my God, intersect. So we're doing it now. What's intersect? All right, for example, the best way for me to describe intersect, similar to what I just did with the wall and subtracting her out, it's like a mask within a mask. That's exactly what intersect is. And remember we added, remove, or select background with 1 click, and it was basically replacing what you used to do with 2 clicks, unless you want to still do 2 clicks, go right ahead. But it would replace the select subject and then having to invert and then to get the background. Intersect is doing subtract and invert. That's technically what it's doing. And that was, Kevin, that was an example of doing intersect manually, like not doing the feature, but doing it manually. So I didn't do an invert. So it's really technically not an intersect. Let me give you an example of when you would want to use it. I want to change his blue shirt. If I were to say, oh, it's blue, use color range. Nobody else is wearing blue, should be easy, right? So let's go in and go to develop and go to color range and do, go to color range and say, oh yeah, I want to do his blue shirt. But see how some of the background's being selected? Because the shirt isn't a nice solid blue. So Lightroom's thinking, hey, that blue's kind of similar to the background, and if I were to change the exposure of his shirt, the background's changing too. So in this case, this is a perfect case for intersect. Let me show you how I would do it. Undo, or just get rid of these masks. Get rid of the mask. Delete all masks. Great. So we're starting over. Now remember, I said if there are people in it, it's automatically going to select people. So there's person 1. Hang on, let me zoom out so you can see them all. Person 1, person 2, person 3. So they're all there. Great. So what I would do, instead of starting with the shirt, I start with select the person, because that'll give me him completely isolated and not the background and not anyone else. See where I'm going with this? So I select him, entire person, same thing as select subject, but in this case, select subject would be all 3. That's why person's better. And create mask. Great. So now it's a mask of him, but I only want his shirt. This is where intersect comes in. So instead of me having to subtract, object, invert, and try and get just his shirt, there's an option. If you, and by the way, we'll call this shirt because that's what it's ultimately going to be. There's an option that says, if you go to the little 3-dot menu here, there's an option called intersect. And intersect will let you pick what you want to intersect with. So that's what intersect, that's how you get to intersect. Intersect mask with. In this case, now I can do color range, because now I'm doing color range, but I've already isolated him. So the background won't be touched because I'm doing an intersect within the first mask. So intersect is only if you already have a mask, you're intersecting with that mask with another selection method. So in this case, select color range. Great, so now I can go in and do the exact same thing I did before. Select just the blue. And look, his face just didn't get selected anymore. because I've told, and the place under his arm got selected, everything got selected. So now when I mess with his shirt, nothing else is changing. Not the background, not her hand, not his face, not anything else. So just remember, intersect, and the reason I'm really explaining what it's doing is for a reason. Intersect is subtract and invert, if that makes sense. Because if I'd have just subtracted the shirt, then I'd have to invert that mask to get the shirt back. So, mind blown, reverb mic. All right, that's what I love to hear. Why am I explaining that 3 times, that it's subtract and invert? Because in Lightroom, not Lightroom Classic, the other Lightroom, this Lightroom. Because in Lightroom, there is no intersect. So if I bring up that same photo and I do the same thing, and I do the same, oh, it already has the mask because it's the same photo. All right, let's do it on a different person. Let's do it on a different person. Let's go ahead and create a new mask. And I do it on the guy with the red shirt. I do a people mask first. It detects people. I was like, wait, the mask is already there because it synced it already. I don't know why it's taking so long to detect people. It should be instantaneous. There we are. All right, so I do the guy on the right. Great. And I create that mask. Great. But now I don't, there's no, they did add it. Never mind. This wasn't there before. So you would have had to do I had to explain it anymore because it's here. So you do it the exact same way now. But before this was added to Lightroom, you would have had to have done subtract and then invert. I think you still have to on mobile. So that might be the only place left you still have to do it unless they've snuck that in on mobile as well. But now it's here as well. So intersect mask using, voila, the Lightroom team does it again. I don't have to explain it the hard way. Okay, great. So now you got intersect on both products, no matter which one you use. So that is now let me give you Reverb Mike, you thought your mind was blown with that example. Let me give you a better one. Let's go here. If I just wanted to change her red dress, piece of cake, select subject, intersect, color range, done. I don't want to select her at all. I want all that green. Yeah, all of it, but not the wall, not the other stuff. So let me give you another example of how intersect can be used. I'm going to go back to the old way of doing it. I'm going to go to mask. I'm going to do brush. And I could probably get away with color range, but let's pretend she had on a green dress. So I'm going to do mask. I'm just going to do a big mask. I'm sorry, brush. I'm using brush, right? Yeah, I'm using brush. Oh, you know what I don't want though? Undo. That's what's throwing me off. Mask and brush, but I don't want auto mask on. I just want big brush strokes. There we go. All right, so I'm being very careful, as you can tell. I'm being super careful. Oh, don't get the wall. Oh, too late. Oh, don't get her hair. Oh, too late. Don't get her. Oh, too late. I'm being super careful. Get that little piece in there. Oops. Part of her selected. Oh, no. Oh, her hair. Oh, no. Oops, the wall again. Oops. This is why brushing is traditionally bad, because you're just going to get it on stuff you didn't want to get it on. All right, so now I definitely got all the green selected. All right, but I didn't want that green up there. So that's another example. So now that I got all that green selected, and I definitely overpainted on the wall, overpainted all around her, I messed up. But I don't have to be that careful with intersect. So now we'll go to, we'll just call this one vines. We'll go to our new vines mask, and we'll do intersect. And we'll say intersect using whatever you want, but in this case, I'm just going to do color range. And now I'll just go over here and pick, I don't know, this leaf. And boom, it subtracts out. Hang on, it should subtract out the stuff I didn't want. Yeah, it did. Okay, there we go. So now I can change those leaves without it impacting the trees, her dress, her hair, any of that, because I did just a broad brush with intersect, and intersect using color range is basically saying, in all that messy brushing, just pick the green. That's basically what I did. So that's another use for intersect. So I've seen Julianne Koss, for example, does a nice job where she's got some trees going across a mountaintop. And she'll brush the heck out of the trees and then use intersect with linear gradient or one of the other color, luminance range or whatever. Just the trees are selected. So it's fun when you start thinking of all the ways you can use this. Okay, next up, let's get out of here. Let's go to Photoshop. I could spend the whole day in Lightroom, but I just remember I got some Photoshop to show you too. Okay, jump back over to this image. Let's start with what I call the legacy tools, just quickly. Photoshop wasn't always Photoshop, just that we know today and love. It wasn't, just like Lightroom wasn't always the new masking 2.0 and 3.0 that we know and love now. So back in the day, you had all kinds of, horrible ways to select things in Photoshop. I say that now because back then that's all we had, but today we have much better ways. So for example, someone mentioned the magic wand. The magic wand selects based on color range. Selects based on contiguous colors that are similar. So if I clicked the black in this soccer ball, it didn't do a good enough job because this part wasn't as dark as that part. Then I'd have to go up and either try and keep clicking or go up and adjust the tolerance to make it more liberal to go in and grab more of it. This was the pain we lived. Oh, too much, because all of this is white and that's not white enough. And so this was the problem with making selections back in the day, is that it was a lot of, and by the way, it spilled out onto the background, so the whole background selected. This is the problem we had back in the day because these kind of tools were, from the 80s. They were, or 90s, I should say, 90s. They were rudimentary. Oh, so I want the whole ball. Well, maybe I'll use the elliptical tool and I'll kind of guess where the corner is and I'll kind of drag around it and I'll hold down the shift key to make it perfect circle. And oh, I didn't guess right, so I'd have to pick it up and move it. Oh, I made it too big or too small. Yeah, we don't want to do any of that anymore. Now, we didn't take those tools away. So people that still have workflows based on those tools can still use them all day, every day. But there are much better ways of doing selections than the legacy, what I call the legacy selection methods. So for example, one of the ways is this newer quick selection tool. So the quick selection tool was like Magic Wand 4.0. So it was like really a big jump from what the Magic Wand used to do. And you use it like a brush. So for example, I can make it bigger and I can click and look, it selected that. I can click again. It already is set to add and I keep clicking, or I can just drag it. And as I drag it around, eventually, if I hit all the spots that are different, like that, and that, and that, and that. Okay, great. So now I got the whole ball selected. So much faster, much, much easier than the Magic Wand ever was. So yeah, that's just way quicker. And then the Photoshop team is never resting on the laurels. That wasn't quick enough. Deselect, the new object selection tool. The object selection tool uses AI to figure out what the objects are in your scene. Oh, there's a ball, click, done. That's the object selection tool. It selects it out, it figures out what the objects are. And even if it doesn't, even if it didn't guess the ball right, I can still click and drag a rectangle around it just like I did in Lightroom and have it figure out, oh, you must want the ball. Done. So this is, again, we don't use those old methods that much anymore. All right, let's go here. Now, in this case, this will be another case where I might want to start with maybe something like quick select, and just giving you another quick select example. Quick select is, as the name implies, is quick, not necessarily accurate. We don't call it the accurate selection tool. We call it the quick selection tool. I was holding down my Option key or Alt key to subtract, my Shift key to add, and Option to subtract down here, and it kind of learns and adapts, and it does, you know, good job. Okay, great, Zorro, yeah. All right, next up. This is another example of the object selection tool. So not only can it figure out what these objects are and just click on them, hold down your Shift key and keep clicking to get different ones selected way faster than any other method. This one's going to blow your mind because this one's kind of a hidden one. I'm in the object selection tool, and I'm going to right click on the layer or the background in this case. And there is a mask all objects option that you would never know is there because you'd have to be in that tool to see it. Mask all objects, and it will create a mask for every single object in the scene and add it to your layers panel. So now if you need to get a particular object, it won't name them, it doesn't know which one's which, but you can just hold down your Command key or Control key on Windows and just select the objects. So boom, all of them masked quickly, individually, boom, done. Can't beat that. No way you could have done it that fast in any other method. Okay, to deselect is always Command D or Control D on Windows. Next up, the object selection tool also works on people. So we could say select subject, but I'm just going to go ahead and drag it around the person. And it even tries to do a good job on hair, and we'll get into that in just a minute. All right, please wear your mask. All right, next up, let's go into this one. Now, this is a challenging one. This one's one a user submitted to me a while back. They want to change the color of these purple balls, but they're imagine trying to select those and not get the little spaces in between the wires. So Photoshop has always had a select, or always, but a long time ago, had select color range. This is a legacy selection method, but it still works. So select color range lets you click on a color, and you can hold down your Shift key and add to that color and keep clicking that to get more of that color and get different variations of that color to get them all selected. So I'm just holding down my Shift key and keep clicking, and then you can adjust the fuzziness, which is a weird way of saying the range. So more will give you more of it, less will give you less of it. And then once you're happy, and again, you won't know because this is legacy, so you get a little preview. You don't get a preview on, oh, wait, selection preview? Grayscale, let me see what that looks like. Oh, that's actually pretty cool. We do get that on the image. Cool. All right, I take that back. I take my criticism back. All right, there we go. Click OK. And that will give me all of those selections. And what can I do with them? I can go in and add a hue and saturation adjustment layer. And then I can go in and simply change their color to something else. So that is still effective for doing this kind of work. All right, next up. Let's go in. I want to get this one in because I'm going to run out of time. So we know we have select subject, right? That was my focus area. Let's go to this one. This is a good one for select subject. We showed this one in the intro class. So if I do select subject on this, the problem is, what is the subject? Is it the kicker and the ball or just the kicker? In this case, Photoshop thought it was just the person, not the ball. And this is another hidden one. I'm going to deselect. I'm going to switch to a selection tool. Any selection tool that gives me the select subject button. There's a new pull down, and that pull down device means it does the selection based on your device, or cloud gives you more detailed results. When I choose cloud, it's a one-time thing, so you have to do it each time unless you go change your preference. Now when I click select subject, it got the ball, it got more of him, it did it a better job. So if select subject's not nailing it for you, try select subject using the cloud base with all the machines in the cloud to do a better selection to get you that. All right, next, we get a kick out of Photoshop. I like that, that's cute. All right, next up, this is a oldie but goodie. And this is, we got 2 left in maybe 1 minute. This is an oldie but goodie, but select focus area. So the shallow depth of field is all the green in the background. The birds and the branch are the foreground. I got a little redraw problem here. I'm just going to go ahead and click OK. And look, it selected the branch and the birds just perfectly. So it selected what was in focus area. All right, last but not least, let's open up this one. And let's put somebody on it very quickly, very quickly. I've done this image before. We're gonna move her legs down because she doesn't have the bottom of her feet showing. And make her a little bigger. And there we are. And then we're gonna say done. No, we got one more thing to do. Select subject. Great, selects her. And then we're gonna choose select and mask, which is this button right here. And that's it. It cuts her out using all the AI features that are built in. You could go in and refine the edge if it didn't do it with a brush. We can choose to decontaminate colors. Does a much better job, and there she is. No background, and the background's been masked. And that's my day. That's my show. So with that said, cheers everyone. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one. I'm out of time today. Hopefully you got something out of this. Enjoy. Stay tuned for more.